got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey everybody, good evening. I just want to say thank you for popping in on the show. You guys, as usual, I'm your host, Daniel. And tonight, you guys, I have an amazing guest with an incredible yet chilling story to tell. But before we get into the story, I just want to say again, thank you for all the support that you show the channel. The subscriptions, the likes, the shares, the comments. I read all the comments. I try to reply in some way, shape, or form. Just so you guys know, I truly appreciate you. I also have a membership to the channel. $2.99 gets you early access to a Saturday release. I do that once a month. So if anybody out there's had a encounter and you would like to come on the show, please email me at the Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. The Cryptid Podcast 72 at gmail.com. Same email if you just want to get your encounter off your chest. If you would like me to narrate your encounter, I would be more than happy and honored to do that as well. But without further ado, you guys, let's bring on this incredible guest tonight, all the way from sunny Phoenix, Arizona. We've got Taylor. Taylor,
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm going to tell you right now, what you told me you think you saw, in actuality, is not what you saw.
Yeah.
And it's downright frightening. Just how you just kind of described it a little bit before. I said, hold on, wait a minute. You got to look behind me to make sure nothing's going on.
Yeah. It's a little scary.
So you guys, when Taylor was a teenager, I'm not going to say how old, because that's none of our business. You don't ask a lady her age. This happened in Wrightwood, California, when she was a teenager. And without further ado, I just want Taylor, go ahead and jump on in and let us know what you saw, what happened. Give me all the details.
Okay. All right. Well, it started when, like I said, I was a teenager. We had this tradition that my mom had kind of picked up that had happened to us when I was a little bit younger, from my piano teacher, where it was like a ding dong ditch type of thing 12 nights before Christmas. So it was like, it happened to us where we got the manger first, and then every night it was a piece. And my mom loved it. On Christmas, you would bring the baby Jesus and kind of just introduce yourself. And when it happened to us, it was terrifying because they didn't tell the parents, but my mom decided to tell the parents moving forward, like as we did it, because she didn't want us to get shot. So basically, this was quite a few years later. We did it every year, every night, 12 nights before Christmas. And then we knock on the door. Like I said, every night or every year, the parents knew. At this point now, we've moved to Wrightwood. Wrightwood is like a pretty desolate area, so there's not much to do there. And it was during Christmas break. So a lot of the kids around, the local kids on the dirt road that I lived on, would love to do it with me. And my niece, who lived with me as well my whole life. Sometimes I might call her my sister. My niece, the same person. She was the only person there that was, like, besides my mom, related to me. But my niece and I did it obviously all the time. And then my friends, there was 3 of them. They wanted to do it that night, and we were supposed to have a slumber party. It was me, my niece, 2 girls, and a boy, and my mom. And we were dropping off the donkey and the poem for the donkey that night. And backstory on the kid we chose, because I feel like it's kind of important to the main story too. He lived at the end of the road on our dirt road. And it was way up in the mountains. It was like way further than my house. My house was the second house in, and you had to go pretty deep up, down and up into this kind of mountain range. And the road got really narrow. And so my mom would turn the car around before the last mountain. The road went around this mountain like that before the lights hit down in the ravine where this kid lived, because he would like chase us. He was like 9 or so at the time, and he was really fast, and we were like older teenagers. So we weren't as fast as him. So she wanted to make sure she was kind of further back than normal that night. And sorry, I get like a little choked up sometimes thinking about it, but we were in a Jeep Wrangler, 2-door, where the seats pulled up and came back down and whatnot. And some of us had kind of piled in on each other. Like I was the oldest and tallest. And so it was me, my nieces, and my whatever friend. And she laid across us kind of. And then the boy sat in the front. We got out of the car before we had turned around. And mind you, too, this house that we were going to that night was down in this ravine part of the mountain. And like I said, the road did end. But also she had the foster mom, she was actually a foster mom. She had like a main house. And then she had little like tiny homes that she rented out. And she probably owned like 3 or 4 acres or so of land. And so people rented it, which also plays into the story. And that night, my mom knew her pretty well. And we got out of the car. And like I said, we turned around before the turn and she was facing this way. And we went that way. And it was really kind of warm that night for like right before Christmas, which was also strange. Like I remember wearing like a hoodie, like I wasn't even wearing like a jacket. And we were raised as like pretty good mountain kids. I mean, we had horses and we had like 5 dogs and stuff. So it wasn't like we weren't used to it. And I'm very comfortable with animals. So we had walked out and the road was so narrow that we had to walk shoulder to shoulder, almost touching, to not like walk behind each other. That's how narrow it got. I mean, it didn't get so narrow, but like it was pretty narrow. And I remember I was on the far right and next to me was the guy. And then the rest of the girls were on the other side. And we came down the path, we rounded the bend, and there was a big mountain range that came down the road and then another mountain range. And then it went straight and it turned around the mountain and then it went down to the house. And as we're coming onto the head on, it's like a cliff. Well, it wasn't a cliff, but it was like a fall off thing. All of a sudden I had this like weird feeling to like stop walking. I don't really know why, but I just did. I felt like something like really evil kind of came into the air. And also, I'm not even gonna lie, and it gets me like kind of emotional, but it felt like we were in like, I felt like I was in like this weird like trance thing, like stuck almost. And I thought I heard some stuff coming up at us. So I stopped, and mind you, there was no clouds in the sky. It's like 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock maybe. And the moon was already out. So maybe it was later. I don't know. But the stars were totally out. Like we're in the mountains. So like you can see everything at night when it's that bright. And I stop and I hear something a little bit. And then all of a sudden I see this huge hand with like really long fingers and a weird shoulder hunched over, fling its hand up and over, and then another one up and over, and then up. But it came so fast. I mean, it was probably like maybe 3 seconds for this gigantic, terrifying thing to come up. But it felt like it also was going in slow motion, like when you're in a car accident and like things move really slowly. And I remember in that brief moment of it coming up the hill, and it might even have been right before it started to come up, I looked to my left at everyone. Like I said, there was no one to my right. And I remember everybody else, all the kids that I was there with, going like just staring with their mouth agape as well. They were watching the same thing I was watching. I mean, I think everyone was just like in shock, but we didn't say anything to each other. It wasn't like any of us were like, oh, did you hear that? We had been talking leading up to the turn. And mind you, we weren't very far from my mom's car. We had turned the corner and we made it like halfway down the road by the time this thing came at us. But it wasn't like I was whispering. I was telling them what we should do because the kid was chasing us. And all of a sudden I just kind of stopped talking. It wasn't like anyone was like, oh, did you hear that? Like, that's not what happened. we just stopped. I'm watching it. I look to my left. I look back ahead, and it's still scaling the mountain, almost basically over the cliff thing. And when it came up, I remember its shoulders were doing this weird jerky movement that was just completely unhuman on both sides. And you could see its blades like popping out on its back. And you could see its muscles on its arms, very defined. It was extremely lean, and it was there physically, but it was almost not kind of like, you could see it totally 100%. It was there. But the thing about it was, it just didn't seem human. Like, it didn't seem like fully skin either at the same time, but you could see it tightly cut in. I mean, its muscle tone was super tight. It was so strange. But when it came up the hill, after it did this weird hand, it was on its hands and feet when it crawled up the mountain at us. And the reason why I could tell is because I watched it come up and stand. So when it stood, I could then see, oh, it's crawling on its hands and feet, because then it just pushed itself up with its hands flat, and pushed it just like a humanoid. Then it turned into a humanoid, full-blown, male-looking and feeling kind of animal monster thing. It felt very demonic. And it had red glowing eyes, and it had a pointed chin and a big head. And it took one step towards us while we were all still just standing there watching it, like in shock, I guess. And it almost felt for a second once it took the first step. And I've been on one other podcast once, and I mentioned this story. I mean, told the story, but I forgot to mention this. Like, when it took, I only saw it take one step before I turned and I ran, but it almost felt like we were in this weird channeling thing, and it was kind of like it was like laughing at us, like, I'm gonna eat you. Like, it was like, like it had this weird feeling to it, like it was kind of mocking us with its movement, but it moved its hand forward as it stepped, not like a human, whereas a human's hand, its palm that's facing your hip, its hand was back. And I don't remember how many fingers it had. I don't know if it had 5 fingers or not, but I know that its thumb was really weird. And I can't remember exactly what about it was weird, but I do remember thinking that looks really weird. And when it took its first step, that's when I turned and just got out of there. I turned on a dime, and I was the oldest. Like, I think I mentioned that. But I feel like they decided to follow me because of that. Like, maybe me turning was their ultimate thing to be like, oh, she's going. But it wasn't like I said run or anything. I just turned and ran, and then they followed after me. And I remember I was running so hard. I've never ran that hard in my whole existence. Sorry, but my feet were hitting the ground so hard that it felt like the balls of my feet were gonna break, because I was running so crazily and it hurt. I was in like Converse, definitely not running as hard as I would have away from that kid. I was running for my life, and I knew I was too. And everyone I could tell knew we were all in serious danger. And we ran around the corner, and my mom was expecting me to be gone for, 20, 30 minutes or so. She didn't expect, because we took a while to get down there. We'd have to hide from this kid and stuff. So she would read a book. She would just have the light on away from the dugout, away from the road to where he couldn't see her. And she'd have her light on, and she'd just be reading until we got there. And she parked more than far enough away to where we have to walk a while. So she was not expecting us whatsoever. And I remember her reading and then glancing up and doing like, what, like type of face at me in the rearview mirror. And I remember I remember thinking, please just drive when we get in the car. And I swung the door open and I pulled the seat up and I was like, go, go, go. And that's when I started screaming. And the kids all jumped in. They just scrambled in. We didn't even like find a seat belt. No, we just ran and jumped and stumbled into the car. And then the 3 girls I was with jumped in. And then the boy was coming up behind me. So I knew he was like a year younger than me, but he was like a black belt in jiu-jitsu or brown belt or something at the time. Or I mean, still is always, obviously, but he was already very high up. So I kind of like knew that he was going to be the one to sit in the front seat instinctually. So I jumped in on top of the girls and I pulled the seat down, and it actually landed on my shin and like permanently scarred me. I immediately was like bleeding down my leg, and like a pretty like aggressive like bruise cut combo where like it rips the skin, but it doesn't, but like it was bleeding pretty bad for such like a rough abrasion, but I didn't even notice at the time. But I pulled the seat down and I remember it hurting so bad, but I didn't care. And I just pulled it back, and he jumped in, and before the door could even shut, I mean, I'm screaming drive at this point. And my mom, thank God, because I could feel it just coming for us. I mean, I never looked behind me once it took its first step. So I don't know how close it got to our car. I don't know if my mom saw it. I've asked her if she did. She remembers the night, of course, but she said she didn't see anything, but she also said she wasn't looking for anything. So she didn't realize what we were running from. So she didn't really, but it had red eyes. So I feel like she would have seen it. If she saw it, she would have known. But she slams on the gas, and it was a stick. So she got us out of there pretty fast, and we're flying down the mountain. And we finally came down to an embankment, and I was like, no, keep going, keep going. And she was like, what? Like, cause I knew it was so fast that her going even 20 to 30 miles per hour on this steep road is not really moving that fast in comparison to how fast this thing was moving at us. So she finally drove us all the way home. And we now at this point are utterly hysterical, screaming and crying. And my mom's trying to calm us down. And she was pretty impatient as a mom. And she's getting frustrated. And, you know, we have to still go drop off this like donkey at the door. And like this boy's Christmas is going to be ruined. So she's trying to talk us into going back, and the girls are crying. They didn't want to, I remember now looking back on it, like they didn't even want to stay that night. Like I think they either had their parents pick them up or they were dropped back off at their house. I'm just devastated. And I was like the mama bear once again. So the fact that I'm just full blown, like freaking out is like not the best thing. And my dad, I haven't remembered this part in a while, but in preparation, I was really like concentrating because I feel like I blocked a lot of it out for a while. But I was trying to think back on how my dad reacted. And I did mention this before, but I thought, how did he even talk to us? Because he normally went to bed really early because he had to go to work. But he talked to us that night, and he did because he heard us screaming. And he was upstairs already. He came downstairs to talk to us about it. And my mom called for him too. I think she was upset that we wouldn't go. And I normally would always do whatever my mom said. I was a really good kid, but I was like, I can't go back, Mom. Like, there's no way. And she was insisting that it was either like, she thought one of the guys that rented at one of the cabins was playing a prank on us. That was one of her examples of what could it be. Because it could not be. I said, she told me later, years later, recently, that when I jumped in the car, the first thing I ever said that it was, quote, a demon man is what I called it. So she didn't believe that because like, who believes that, right? And cryptids are not a thing at the point at all. Like you're crazy if you even think Bigfoot's real. So she thought it was, like I said, a neighbor, like one of the little tiny home cabin people that they're vagabond people and like they had to be messed up in the head or something. Like that was kind of her first excuse. And I was like, Mom, this thing was over 8 feet tall, like, and it moved up the side of a mountain, like cliff thing that at inhuman speed. I've never even seen a mountain lion run that fast. Like that was not what that was. The second thing she said was a bear with mange. And I was like, we live in the high desert of Southern California. We have bears, but they're not that common. And they definitely don't look like an 8 foot tall, once again, red-eyed glowing monster, man. That's terrifying. That can stand and walk on its feet and on its, like, no. I know they walk on their hands and feet, but yeah. So she gets frustrated and she calls the woman who lives at the house and she asks her, are any of your renters out tonight? Because the woman even was like, where are the kids at? Like, what's going on? It's getting late. Like, he's got to go to bed. And she told the mom what happened. And she was like, none of my renters would do that. Like, that's really weird. Like, who would do that? And then she even said, like, that's really strange. But the owner of the house never said, like, oh, I've seen something like that. She just kind of let us not come. She was just like, okay, understood. Like, it seemed like she'd maybe heard that before. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of it, other than the fact that the first podcast I was on, the day that I posted that I was going on it, a bunch of people from Wrightwood that all I grew up with had commented a bunch of stories about the thing with the glowing eyes. And a lot of my, like my first boyfriend I ever had was like, good thing you're putting Wrightwood on the map with the thing with the glowing eyes, or the man with the glowing eyes. He said it was blue eyes, but what I saw was very much red or orange or yellow, but I'm pretty confident it was red. Like, I've really thought about it. I remember that night, that's the first thing I thought was extremely weird about it. And like, I've kind of gaslit myself a little bit about certain things. So sometimes I'll be like, maybe it was orange, maybe it was yellow, but I know what I saw and it was red eyes. Like, it's just been a long time. But yeah, either way, the fact that like Wrightwood was mentioned, I didn't even mention Wrightwood when I said I'm going to be on a podcast that night. So I was kind of on an adrenaline rush from that when I went on the podcast the first time. And I feel like I missed a lot of like details, and I didn't really go into detail on what I saw. I was just talking about the fact that a lot of my neighbors saw the same thing, or their stories of what they saw happen. And I didn't really even explain that very well either. So when I started listening to you, Dan, like you could tell you care, and you ask really poignant questions. So I was like, you know what, I'll just reach out. And yeah, that's how we got here. And that's my story.
Okay. Which box do I open up to start asking questions? Is that's crazy.
Like, I even want to cry, like, after I just said it all, because I don't think about it, how much we were like in serious danger that night.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of blocked it out. And yeah, the first time I told it, I wasn't in the best like relationship at the time. So I feel like my mind was already still like super messed up. But now that I've had time as like a single person on my own now, and I have a lot of time to think to myself, and I listen to your podcast at work a lot, I really think about it. And like, we were in so much danger that night.
Yeah. Like,
it would have killed us. If my mom wasn't there, we would have been dead.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I know, when I say I know that fear firsthand.
Yeah. No, I heard your encounter, one of them. Anyway, just one.
The only encounter that I've posted on my channel was the last encounter I had. It was with my little brother.
Yes.
And
I got that.
I know.
So that's why I'm not laughing at you. It's just like only the people that have seen something like that, like that level where you're in serious, like that you were.
It's like everything around you is changing in milliseconds, because your whole time dilation, even though your encounter is maybe that quick, seconds, everything slowed down around you, with the exception of that thing you were looking at.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, you were running so hard, your feet were hurting because you didn't realize how hard you were running. And I'm sure at the time, I started kind of chuckling. We said, and I was out of there, and everybody else, they must have bought what I was selling and followed me. It's a fight or flight sense. And when things hit people different ways, here's the thing. I don't fault you for booking out of there first, but I think I tend to believe that just as you were turning to bolt, the other ones were right, like milliseconds behind you, following the same thing right behind you. They're like, nope, we're gone. And if it wasn't you taking off first, you would have seen other people running right by you, and then you
Yeah.
would have been trying to catch up to them.
I hope that would have happened, or else we would have been screwed. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter now. We got out of there, but like, I thought at first you were saying you might have seen more skinwalkers, and I'm like, oh my god, that's terrifying. But no, you were talking about the kids.
Yeah, you would have seen. You said there was one boy and two other girls.
One boy and 3 girls, and
3
myself.
girls.
There was 5 of us. Yeah.
Yeah. So one was your niece, 2 friends, and then a boy.
Yeah.
You would have seen 4 other people in a blur blowing right by you.
Yeah.
And I think it was just milliseconds between you turning and them turning and taking off.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's ask. Here's a real easy question. So when you said that you would go to this person's house and you would leave in pieces of the nativity scene on their lawn. So then by the time it was Christmas or whatever, the whole nativity scene was set on there. And then after Christmas, you guys would pick it all back up. And then
it was a gift.
Oh, okay.
So every year my mom would get a new set, and it had to be very specific, and it was very hard to get the specific characters.
Right.
That was
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was.
So the road that you're walking down, you said it narrowed into almost to like a trail. So
like
there's a trail.
Road, like a car could not. Somebody would have to back up.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, what was on both sides of this road?
To my right was a mountain. It was kind of just like a ravine where the road kind of cut through it. But where the thing came from, it turned to the left, and straight ahead was nothing. I mean, the mountain on the left stayed going, but the mountain on the right turned far to the right, so it just went straight.
So was there like a ditch or something on
Kind
that
of.
side?
Yeah, I mean, eventually it broke off to a ditch, and like that's where the whole big. I would say I went back recently, and where it came up from, the incline was. I don't even know what the angle, but it was like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was sand.
Okay.
It's not like it's rock. It's a lot. It would be a lot to move up that very fast. It wouldn't be that fast as a person. And
so it came up on the right side, which just so happened to be the side you were on.
Straight at us. The street was turning to the left, and this mountain kind of fell off, right? So it kind of opens up, but it came literally up straight at us.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So do you happen to know the history of that specific area by chance?
Yeah. So the Mormon rocks are right by there. So that's like the big, first of all, thing that I think is like a big part of it. But also I think that whole area is just really strange. I know there was a lot of native wars and, just colonization of horrific things that happened right in through there. I mean, there was water, like the climate's amazing. I don't know all of the history, but I do know that the Mormons did migrate to Wrightwood. I mean, it was a very highly populated Mormon town. It's like 50% or something like that. So it is a highly religious area. And then the road where the road is, I shouldn't even say the name of the road. I don't want people showing up at my neighbor's houses and then being upset. But there's a white triangle at this mountain where the road meets the mountain. And from the stories, I don't know if this is true, they were mining quartz and salt there for like a really long time, and then it dried up and then they stopped. That's the story. It was kind of weird. Like I thought that was kind of like a weird reason to just like stop. But I've been up to the top of that mountain. There's actually 3 steps that are like, it looks like carved into it, probably when they were running all that stuff up and through there. But it is really creepy up there, and you can see all the way out. Like you can see, like I even said on the last podcast, the Baker thermometer, like you can see all the way out there. And straight to the left was where that road, I mean, it's on the road, like you're looking down on the road when you're on that mountain. So I just think it's the history of it. Like I said, I don't know fully, but I do know that there's a lot of things that have happened that aren't necessarily good.
Okay. Let's see here. So you kind of went into a little bit of detail on what the movement was of this creature. Now you said it was kind of like jerky. So it would kind of like, and we talked about a movie, it was World War Z with Brad Pitt, and you said those zombies, it kind of moved jerky like that, but it was incredibly fast.
Like when I saw the trailer for that movie years later, that was kind of actually one of those moments where I realized that what we saw I wasn't crazy, Like, I don't know if you've had those moments. Like for a long time, I told myself we didn't see anything. Because like even that night, my dad believed me. Like he totally that night. He didn't say he believed me, but I feel like he did. Like, but it was one of those things where it was so crazy that it's like they didn't even believe us. Like it was like he believed us. I think more. My mom was adamant that we were just batty. She actually recently apologized to me for reacting that way and was like, "I'm going to be honest with you. I have never ever seen you scared like that, ever." To the point where when we locked eyes, she admitted to me, like when we locked eyes, she knew that she needed to go. Like before we even came in the car, like we were in danger. She's like, your eyes just told me that we were not okay. But that movie, when I saw its movements, was kind of the first trigger of like, I saw that and that's how it moved. It was fast like that. Like when they're crawling up that tower in New York, whatever, the skyscraper, like that's how fast it moved. And its shoulders were its hands and its shoulders it was very fluid in the sense that it was strong and swift, but its movements were jagged. Like, and when it came up the mountain, it was hunched because it was on its hands and feet and it was super tall, that when its hand came out and back and flew over, that's when its shoulders were doing this weird, like movement. And the moon was so far out and the stars were so bright that you really could see every little detail of it. It was crazy. Like its fingers, you could see the indent of where the nubs were, the nail bed. Like you could see that. Like I really sat there and I think I was just trying to take it in. I don't know why. Like I said, I felt like I was in this weird trance. So I was just really intently looking at it for a second. But it was so fast, I guess I didn't. I don't know. It was weird.
Now you mentioned sounds. Like what kind of sounds did you hear prior to seeing it? And did you hear any sounds after you saw it?
Rustling. Like when I really concentrate, it sounded like at first, my immediate instinct was that it was like a mountain lion. Like I heard like it sounded like something coming. And now that I've been there, there's a trail that leads up to the road, from that embankment that it took up the embankment. There is literally the path in the forest or whatever, not the forest, but the foliage, the desert stuff. Like there's a path, and that's exactly where it came up. And it kind of shocked me. I was like, that's so weird. But with that said, I think we were hearing rocks coming down. I think it was running down and back up so fast that things were just flying. It was just going so fast.
Now I'm going to make a noise and tell me if you've heard this noise.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what's weird is I feel like when I heard that just now, I feel like I heard that more towards my house, like after. Like we were so close to it. And a lot of the time I would just tell myself it was like an animal. Like, because we were really in the middle of nowhere. We lived out there and I was used to it. I wasn't creeped out by the dark. I wasn't that type of kid. So when I would hear noises like that, because I know I did. It was oftentimes when I was like feeding the horses. Like I would be outside like at dusk feeding the horses and I would hear it then. And even that night, I remember my dad, like the next night, not that night. The next night, I always fed the horses in the morning and at night. But that nighttime, I didn't want to go back out there. And he thought, he was fairly patient to a point. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of getting impatient with me. Like, okay, dude, like you got to go outside. The horses have to freaking eat. Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
But it was really troublesome because I also felt like we never talked about it again. Like all of the kids that were there that night, we felt weirdly like I could tell, like maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to speak for them, but like it was like, it almost like kind of like I didn't really even talk to them anymore as much. Like it was weird. Like we all felt like we couldn't really talk about it because even admitting out loud after it happened, we were crazy even just to ourselves. And it sucks. Like it's a bummer. Like I heard that one podcast that you had where you asked somebody and you said that you would, you have people that stayed close during that encounter, but like I got sad because I was like, no, we didn't. It was, I think, so traumatizing to all of us, except for my niece. even her and I don't talk super a lot.
You know, it's you know, that noise, I've heard it attributed to two different things. One, the rake, and two, a skinwalker.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm leaning more towards skinwalker because the way you just described it, it doesn't sound like a rake to me, only for the simple fact that the way the head was shaped, you're stating. Did you could you describe, like, did you see its mouth, its nose?
Yeah, so it had a really, and that's, I always get distracted on the story and I don't focus on the features, but it had a very pointed chin.
Yep.
But it had, like, you can see that it had like teeth in its head. I don't know if I saw its teeth. I feel like I want to say I did, but my memory's so blurred now that I don't want to say I did. But I remember that I feel like I did, but you could see like right here, like this part of my mouth. I don't know what this part of my mouth is, where you can see kind of the gum line from your teeth, like pointed, very like concave cheeks, like it's high cheekbones, and its eyes were sunken into its head beyond a normal person, and they were huge, and they didn't have lids, and they were, I really do think, bright glowing red. And I lied to myself because when I told my mom what color eyes it had, and it was not lens flare or anything like that, weird light catching, there was none of that. It was bright burning red, like vibrant, like its whole eyes were red, you know? So when I told her that, she once again was like, that's not what it was, and that's not what happened. You had to have seen an animal. And that's when she kind of went down the bear with mange path. And a lot of other people in Wrightwood think that they mentioned, oh, I thought it was a coyote with mange. I thought it was a bear with mange. It didn't have any hair. So it's not like there was any hair to see to where it would even have patches. It was totally skin. Like it had tight skin and tight muscles and tight, weird, high hips and a very high crotch. And its thighs were like it looked like it worked out. Like it was yoked. Like it was like ripped. And its face came in really tight and its head kind of matched it. Like it had a big backside of its dome, like you could tell. And its nose didn't have anything coming off. It had nostrils, but it was like just in its face. Like it didn't
see. So here's again, now the way you're describing it is now bring me back to the rake.
Right.
You know, so again, I'm at a loss here.
But you know how, like, because it was all black, I couldn't tell you for sure, like, it had a nose, but you could see those black holes. That's it. Yeah. It wasn't like there was definable nose. It was just black holes.
Have you seen Harry Potter?
Yeah.
So Voldemort.
Okay, yeah. Like his head shape, but black.
Yes.
Yeah, his head shape, yeah.
And his nose.
Yes. And I incorrectly said Groot on the first one. I said Groot on this first podcast because I couldn't think of anything else that had like a big head like that. But that was a horrible example. It's not a good example because it was rounded. Its head was very round. It was not like but like it did have where its temples kind of ended, it bulged out like and back a little bit. And people have tried to like draw it. Stranger Things, there was a thing on Stranger Things that reminded me a lot of, somebody showed me a picture one time, and I don't watch that show because it kind of creeps me out. It reminds me a lot of my experience, so I don't really watch the show. But someone showed me something briefly, like as like and I was like, oh, that looks really similar. But it had spindly fingers. Like I don't know if rakes have fingers.
I'm going to show you a picture if I can find one, and I need you to tell me what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to download it onto here real quick, and if you can tell me if this is kind of what you saw. Have you seen that Mel Gibson movie called Signs?
A long time ago, but let me Google.
So do a Google search for alien on the movie Signs. Yeah. And let me know.
I mean, its head, okay, it didn't have as much features on its face like that.
Right.
had like the mouth, like you could see, and its head did go back like that. I mean, I would like, yes, like that's probably, but all black. And its hands went past its knees, but it had, like that's very, totally.
So here's the thing. Again, here is another possibility. You saw what they call a gray.
Oh yeah.
Which is an alien.
Yeah. I've thought about that too.
So again, I'm not going to definitively say that you saw a skinwalker. I'm not going to definitively say you saw a rake, and I'm not definitely saying that you saw an alien, a gray. But you definitely saw something. You permanently scarred yourself jumping in the backseat of your car. You had so much terror in your eyes when your mom looked in the rearview mirror and saw you running up behind her. She automatically knew you guys needed to go.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's not every day that you have a typical sighting of this, or this, and again, who knows what it was.
I have one question for you, because I know you do a lot of Bigfoot encounters, obviously, and there's a lot of car encounters.
Mm-hmm.
What I've heard from the people from Wrightwood that called a lot, they said that they saw a lot of things in their car. And my mom was also technically in her car. Is that, and I've heard of other people, even like in Utah near Skinwalker Ranch, this one military guy once told me, an Uber driver, the craziest story where he swore on his life that he was chased by like 3 of them through this like trail. And I wish I would have gotten his number, but he was like dead serious. I mean, no BS. But with that said, is that more of what rakes do? Is there like a commonality where like Bigfoot, they often do it with the car, or like, is that like a telltale of maybe what it was, or no? Does that not necessarily help at all?
I haven't heard a ton of encounters regarding rakes, skinwalkers, or grays. But what I can tell you with my encounter with the rake is that while I'm sitting there watching TV at my buddy's house while his parents are gone, I hear this scratching noise at the window. And I'm thinking it's the TV. So I'm flipping the channels thinking it's on the channel or whatever. And I'm doing this for like 15, 20 minutes. I hear this noise.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm like, what the heck? So I turn it all the way down and I hear it scratching. And I look over and I'm like, I'm from here to my monitor, which is probably 2.5, 3 feet.
Yeah.
And I look and there's this thing looking in the window at me. And its face was right up to the window. And I flipped out. I told my buddy. And he comes running in and he sticks his face up to the window.
Jeez.
And what he saw was something run away from the window.
Wow.
And that's when we heard his dogs because he went in, got a couple of instruments to use to take waterfowl. And we ran out the back door and grabbed flashlights, and his dogs were almost right on the edge of the woods in his backyard. And we heard this giant like scream and clicking, and the dogs, they took off. And I'm like, looking for my buddy. He's right behind the dogs, and I could feel this thing coming out of the woods. It was just outside my flashlight range. And we got into the house. We were terrified.
Yeah.
So
scary. And that's when you heard the clicking, though, is when it was. So you've heard that before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard that too. And I'm not going to tell you for sure if it was that night, because what I feel like I heard that night was the rocks, but I've heard that before right in my house. And that's what's really scary is like, I've never thought that was the sound that they make. I used to hear that all the time. Like, that's crazy.
Now, my thing is during the day, I would pass that off as a woodpecker.
Yeah, no, this was at night. This is when I'd be like feeding the horses. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. At night. So again, I mean, if I had to throw something out, I'm not an expert, but it's one of those 3 things. I can rule out Sasquatch. I can rule out Dogman. I could pretty much rule out Wendigo.
Yeah, I don't it was after now I've seen how they move
Yeah.
with their back arched rather than hunched.
Yep.
That, because this thing literally, like, you know, like I can't World War Z again, but like it's full blown running like that. Like that's
Yeah.
literally how it ran like that.
And again, that then leads me back to
The rake.
40% rake, 40% skinwalker. Well, no, I'm going to say 45%, and then 10% a gray. But again, grays, I don't know grays to move like that, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Then it just narrows it down to a rake or a skinwalker. But again, I don't know a rake to have the color pigmentation of the skin that you did,
Yeah.
and you're certain that it was like almost black.
No, it was all black, and there was, I mean, it wasn't even like it was nighttime and it could have been another color.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally the darkest black I've ever seen. Like it was like, it looked almost like a shadow. And I've even told people before, like a shadow person, like, because it was, but it wasn't moving like a shadow, but it didn't also, what was, like I said, like, you know, like the moon will reflect light off your skin if you're butt naked out night, like when it's bright. Right. There was no reflection on it. So it didn't almost look like you could reach out and like touch it, because there would be a like even right now, my skin has a reflection. So it was, that part was so creepy to me. Like I couldn't really place like why it wasn't, but you could still make out that it had tone though. You could see the lines in its body. It was wild.
I'm honestly, I'm at a loss of what you and your niece and your two friends and that guy saw. I honestly, gosh, I wish I had a definitive answer for you. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. And, you know, when people watch this, you know, in the comments, you're going to have people out there telling you, oh, no, you definitely saw this. No, I think you saw this. And then you're going to hear stuff that doesn't even go with what we're thinking it is. But beyond the shadow of doubt, I can, with all certainty, say you definitely encountered something. 100%. I don't think it was paranormal.
No.
I think it was a cryptid of some kind.
I questioned whether it was for a while, whether that was paranormal, but
yeah.
No.
But you know, I mean, and people go, "Whoa, you mean a cryptid is?" Listen, a cryptid is. If you just look up what cryptid means. I mean, you think about it, cryptid could be a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, a Skinwalker, a Wendigo, a Kushtaka, the Chupacabra, Mothman, Jersey Devil. It could be any one of those things, you know. If there's no definitive answer on what it is a cryptid of some kind.
Yeah, and I'm personally leaning. I mean, I know you normally ask, so I don't know if you want to ask.
What do you think it was?
I only because of that one episode of Ghost Adventures, which I don't know if you're allowed to say that on all these things, but that one episode about skinwalkers, that episode made me believe that it was probably a skinwalker or an SW walker, because I just feel like the fact that when its hands came down and kind of the arrogant, once it stood, it was really fluid. And it's almost like its shoulders went back a little bit, like kind of like, ha. Like I said, it kind of was just like, but it also felt like it was, if it caught us, we would be dead and it would be eating us. Like it felt like cannibalistically terrifying. It didn't feel like just gonna kill you or get off my land like a Bigfoot. Like it really felt like it was preying on us in a very weird way. But its hands came out like this once it stood, not like this. And it was past its knees. And when I saw that on Ghost Adventures, that's the depiction that they put. And its eyes were literally glowing. So I think that's the only thing. I mean, it could be a rake too. I've also thought that, but I just feel like I lean towards the other.
Yeah. Again, no, only you truly know and what you feel that you saw. Again, because I wasn't there. You and I were not running down the street hand in hand screaming for our lives, you know, to see the exact same thing. So I would have to go with what you believe you saw, and what you believe you saw was a skinwalker.
Yeah, probably.
So
now that we've said all these things out loud, and you know, I've never really like said the things about like World War Z. I mean, I've mentioned it to one person, or I've mentioned that episode to one person, but I've never sat with someone and talked about all these things and lined it up to where I'm like, so it kind of really clicked in my head while we were talking. Like, I originally thought Wendigo just because of the Christmas thing, and it seemed really upset and angry. But at the same time, like, once I've now seen multiple videos of how they move, it doesn't seem like that was it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
well, we're at the end. If you want to hang out in the lobby, I'll go ahead and close this bad boy out. I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and trusting me to be a keeper of your story. I'm really actually really happy I did this again, because the first time I felt very kind of all over the place and panicked, and I feel like I hopefully told a decent description of it, but no, you've really helped, and I really appreciate it. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thank you.
And I appreciate it. You know,
You're a long-term fan.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, and I've told a couple people today. I look at my guests as like my extended family, and I do whatever I can to safeguard your story, safeguard you as a person. I don't know if you know this, but I'm in my comment section every day, and I'm either giving a thumbs up and a heart. Sometimes I'll do a comment as well. If I think the comment's rude but not the point for me to remove it, I just won't give it a thumbs up or anything like that. I may make a comment, but then I've got other people in the comments that will jump on somebody for being rude. So
well, there you go.
I got a loyal fan base.
Yeah, I love that. So, no, I really appreciate it, and I'm starting to get more involved with the cryptid community, just in the sense that, like, truly we understand, you know, and I feel like a lot of the times people are, you know, I've had people be like, you had a group hysterical moment, you just had a group hysteria, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, maybe we did, I don't know. I'm not telling you what we saw per se, I'm telling you just what happened. Like, I'm telling you what I saw, and I'm telling you my experience. But yeah, it was a group hysterical moment. I don't know, but it makes me feel validated to not have someone be like, oh, that's weird, or okay, crazy. Like, you know, it's yeah.
Well, I will tell you, it's weird because you can't pinpoint it. Like with me, with my sighting in 84. That's what it was. There's no doubt about that's what it was. 1,000,000 trillion %. That's what it was. Yeah. You couldn't mislabel it. Yeah. But yet, like you said, you know, I tried to share it. I try to share it, you know, with close people they're around me. Yeah. You're dumb. You're crazy. You're a liar. You saw a bear. No, that's not what I saw. And I'm lucky is that I had my dad there who witnessed it with me. Yeah. Later on, as we lived in this property, my brother verified that he saw what he saw. Yeah. So we knew. But what sucks about that whole thing is now I no longer have my dad with me. No longer I don't have my little brother with me. Two people that could validate every single second of my story that I tell. Yeah. They're no longer here. Yeah. And I mentioned, and I try to
not be validated.
It really does, you know, but it's times where, you know, I would tell the story while my brother and my dad were around. Yeah. Oh yeah, really? Should I just call my dad right now? Should I call my little brother right now? Because they'll tell you what happened. Yeah. You know, and after, you know, I told my dad that people were thinking I'm stupid, I'm dumb. He's like, you know what? It doesn't matter what they think. Yeah. You know what we saw. I know what we saw. Your brother knows what we saw. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what everybody else is. So,
yeah, if my dad had seen it, he would have believed it. I know without
yeah. Yeah. But you know, here's the thing. You know, Taylor, don't let anybody tell you that you're crazy. Don't let anybody tell you that you're dumb or you're making stuff up. You know, I just watched you get emotional. Yeah. You had a very, very intense encounter with something that you, as far as you knew at the time, did not exist. And if you've ever heard anything about it, oh, that's just a tale. That's just a superstition or something that parents tell their kids to get them to come in the house early and go to bed early. Yeah. And here it is, you know, you're a young woman, a teenager, and this freaking thing all of a sudden just pops up out of, and you're like, yeah. So
those terms weren't even really used back when I was that age. Like
Yeah.
I said, Bigfoot, like even if you said that even my dad would kind of be like, oh, come on. Even though he was raised in the Midwest and believed in ghosts and stuff. I'm like, but you don't believe in that. Like, but you just I didn't even know what it was. And when I finally messaged, when I did the first podcast, I did message my friends and I said, hey, do you remember this? 2 didn't respond. My niece finally, I recently talked to her about it and she totally immediately was like, that was horrifying.
Yeah.
But the boy messaged me eventually, and I could even like block out his name and like send it to you. But like, he like said, oh my gosh, I totally blanked that out. Like, what the hell was that thing or something to that effect? And he totally, like, it scared the poop out of me. Like, it was terrifying. Like, and yeah, I mean, to me, that's the only validation I've really received in the sense that like, we just never talked about it again. We totally just zipped it.
You know, if you ever mention this around people, they're like, oh yeah, sure, you did not see it. Those don't exist. All you have to do is ask them. Ask them, well, have you ever seen a blue spotted tree frog? Or have you ever seen an alligator gar? Or have you ever seen an alligator snapping turtle? And they're like, well, no. But you know those things exist, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? I've thrown that at people's face all the time. Well, have you ever seen a lowland gorilla? Well, no. But you know those exist, right? Well, yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Exactly.
Oh.
Well, hang out in our amazing lobby.
You're amazing.
I you know what? Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate it. I try my best, and hopefully over time this will get better and more polished. But a lot of people just like this.
Yeah, because
it's real, it's raw, and it's what it is. So, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hang out in the lobby. Got some stuff to tell you, some things to ask you, and stand by.
Stand by.
All right, guys. Again, I told you this is going to be an incredible, scary, weird, odd encounter, because when we talked about it, it can come to one of two things: skinwalker or rake. Who knows what it is? Only she knows what it was. And if she says it was a skinwalker, I have to believe that's what it is. Now, as my buddy Josh always says, guys, always stay prayed up. And as I always like to say, remember, a legend always begins with a sighting. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a good night.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?